Everyone in the town expected tragedy. A young girl, only 19, was about to be married, not to a neighbor, not to someone she knew, but to a warrior from the Apache tribe. A stranger in every sense of the word, a man whose reputation alone could silence the bravest of men. And yet, what happened on that day would leave the entire town speechless. The year was 1872. On the edge of the untamed American frontier, towns were small, tight-knit, and often fearful. Rumors traveled faster than the wind across the plains. Among them, one story had reached every doorstep. The Apache tribes were fierce, proud, and untouchable. To many settlers, the idea of marrying one of their warriors seemed like a punishment worse than any they could imagine. In the town of Red Rock, this fear was about to become reality. A young woman, barely 19, found herself standing in the town square, dressed in the modest garments her family had provided. Her eyes darted nervously across the crowd. Whispers followed her every step. She's going to marry an Apache? Does she even know what she's walking into? Why would anyone agree to this? Her name was Eliza Morgan. She was known in town for her quiet grace and intelligence, but today her composure was fragile. She had heard stories of warriors whose hands were as lethal as their gazes, stories of families torn apart by cultural clashes, and stories of women trapped in lives they did not choose. And now, she was about to become one of those stories. Eliza's family, standing just behind her, tried to comfort her, though the fear in their own eyes betrayed them. They had agreed to this union not out of love or understanding, but because survival often demanded alliances beyond comfort. Then, the sound of hooves broke the murmurs. The townspeople stiffened. All eyes turned to the entrance of the square. A lone figure approached, tall, imposing, yet calm. His presence alone commanded attention. He was Chetan, an Apache warrior of notable lineage, known for both his bravery and his strict code of honor. Rumors painted him as a man who could strike fear into hearts, but also as one who valued respect and integrity above all else. The townspeople instinctively stepped back. Mothers pulled their children closer. Men shifted uneasily, hands brushing against rifle stocks. Eliza's heart pounded. She had expected a savage, a monster perhaps, but the man who stood before her did not radiate aggression. His eyes, dark and intense, studied the crowd, then shifted respectfully to her. He bowed slightly, not in mockery, but in honor. The townspeople exchanged puzzled glances. This was unexpected. What happened next would change everything. In a town built on fear and suspicion, the first gesture of this warrior would silence every voice of doubt. Chetan stepped forward, his movements deliberate, carrying a small, carefully wrapped bundle. The whispers erupted again. Is that a weapon or a threat? But Eliza's father, though fearful, motioned for him to step closer. The warrior knelt, not aggressively, not arrogantly, but in a gesture of respect that none in the town had ever witnessed before. He presented the bundle with both hands, his gaze locked on Eliza's. The air seemed to hold its breath. The wind stopped for a heartbeat. The townspeople leaned forward involuntarily, drawn to the unexpected moment. Inside the bundle was a hand-carved medallion, a symbol of peace, honor, and protection in Apache culture. To outsiders, it might have seemed simple, almost trivial, but its meaning was profound. Eliza's hands trembled as she accepted it. She did not understand all its significance yet, but she felt the weight of its purpose. A promise of respect, a vow to honor her above all else. The crowd remained silent. Shock replaced fear. Expectation turned into awe. It was in this single, deliberate act, the gift of respect, that the first crack appeared in the walls of prejudice and fear that had held the town captive for generations. On that day, a marriage that had begun in fear became something far greater. And the story of how one warrior's honor could silence an entire town was only just beginning. Chetan spoke softly, his voice carrying a resonance that made everyone pause. "You need not fear," he said. "I come not to harm, but to honor." The words were deliberate, measured, and filled with authority. A hush fell over the crowd. On one afternoon, a storm approached the town, dark clouds rolling over the plains like an ominous warning. The settlers scrambled to secure their homes, but many lacked the skill or foresight to protect themselves fully. Chetan moved quickly from house to house, assisting wherever he could. He reinforced rooftops, helped livestock find shelter, and even guided children safely inside. Each act was performed with efficiency and grace, his movements precise yet gentle. The town watched, jaws dropped. What had seemed like intimidation before was now revealed as leadership. He didn't command them with threats, he guided them with respect and competence. Cultural exchange became a natural part of life in Red Rock. Chetan introduced settlers to elements of Apache knowledge, tracking, herbal medicine, and survival techniques that had been honed for generations. Eliza became his bridge to the town, interpreting subtle gestures and explaining the meanings behind his actions. She began to see the wisdom in traditions she had never understood. "I never knew courage could be so quiet," she whispered to her mother one evening. "Or honor so strong," her mother replied, tears glinting in her eyes. The town slowly absorbed these lessons. Fear transformed into admiration, suspicion into respect. Children learned from Chetan's teachings, while adults marveled at his discipline and moral code. The ultimate test of Chetan's character came when a group of bandits attempted to raid the town. Armed and desperate, they expected an easy target among settlers who had once been afraid of outsiders. Chetan confronted them, not with a bloodthirsty fury, but with calm authority. His stance alone demanded attention, his presence radiating control and courage. "Leave this place," he said. "There is nothing here for you but dishonor if you proceed." The bandits laughed, thinking him naive. But as he moved with precision, disarming one and redirecting another without harming anyone, the settlers witnessed true mastery and discipline. By the time the threat was neutralized, the town understood fully what they had begun to realize in small ways. Chetan's strength was rooted not in fear, but in honor. Eliza's own perception transformed dramatically. She saw the man she had once dreaded not as a stranger, not as a danger, but a partner, a protector, and a teacher. One evening, as they walked along the outskirts of the town, she asked him softly, "Did you know it would be like this?" He looked out over the plains, the setting sun casting warm light across his features. "No," he replied, "but honor guides my actions. Fear will fade, and understanding will grow, if we act with respect." Eliza smiled. For the first time, she felt a sense of peace she had never known. The fear that had haunted her was gone, replaced by trust, admiration, and the beginnings of love. The settlers, too, were transformed. What had started as suspicion and prejudice had evolved into respect and friendship. Families who had once avoided the warrior now sought his advice. Children played freely under his watchful eye, learning lessons in courage and skill. Even the gruffest skeptics began to see the truth. Strength without honor is nothing, but honor with strength can inspire entire